ladies and gentlemen, welcome to India and welcome to Mumbai to the T20 Mid-Year Conference. Mumbai is a city of stories. For over 2 millennia, this city has welcomed visitors and seekers alike from far and wide, over land and over sea. The Romans, the Arabs, the Portuguese, the British, they've all been here, each with their own stories. Stories of ambition and avarice, of journeys made and to be made, of fair winds and furtherance. And in their passage, they each carried back a slice of this great city, shaped by the collective spirit of all who walked here. The spirit of acceptance and amity, of endeavor and enterprise, of collaboration and coexistence, which resonate evermore in these turbulent times we are forced to bear witness to. It is then only in the fine fitness of things that you, some of the wisest minds, should have this conversation here in Mumbai, which predicates on these very qualities towards that secure and sustainable future we so seek. Let the spirit of Mumbai permeate each one of us. Over the next 2 days, as we reimagine our means and methods towards an abundant and prosperous future for all, I invite you to re-engender that indomitable spirit. I would be remiss if I did not extend a special gesture to the many young and eager in attendance today, for they are the inheritors of the legacy we will leave, and upon them, therefore, lies the onerous responsibility to conjoin our kind, enlivening the true spirit of our being. One family, one earth, one future, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. I wish you each an excellent conference and meaningful outcomes. Thank you.
Welcome to everybody again. Jaibal, you couldn't have said it better. You expressed Mumbai exactly the way it is for a long time. So I'm going to follow in your footsteps and just reintroduce myself. Manjeet Kripalani, good evening and welcome to Mumbai. Samir, Ambassador Chinoy in particular, and all the distinguished diplomats, think tank people, and our young people. I'm the Executive Director of Gateway House. We're a foreign policy think tank in Mumbai. I bring you greetings from the heart of India's financial and commercial capital and welcome you most warmly to our port city on the Arabian Sea. Why does Mumbai matter, and why specifically does it matter to the Indo-Pacific? Samir set me a task to ask, at the heart of the Indo-Pacific, why does Mumbai matter? The Indo-Pacific framework stands for two central concepts: maritime security and economic development. Both these intersect here in Mumbai. When Gateway House was started in 2009, it was based on the premise that when you look out of the window in Delhi, you see North Block and South Block. When you look out of the window in Mumbai, you see the Gateway of India, the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, the vast trade that took place over centuries through favorable monsoon breezes. You see the Reserve Bank of India, and you see the Bombay Stock Exchange, the oldest exchange in Asia. The European colonial empires were built on maritime dominance. 300 years later, this circle is complete with maritime affairs once again dictating world politics and economics. The Indo-Pacific is central to this. It feels appropriate that the Indo in the Indo-Pacific is represented here in Mumbai and in the state of Maharashtra, which is the center of India's maritime affairs. Mumbai then offers a different perspective of India's interests. They are historically international, historically maritime, and both are intertwined. The great Maratha ruler Shivaji created a navy in India at a time when Indian rulers were looking landward rather than at the seas like the Europeans were. Shivaji's navy was a force to reckon with in Mumbai's waters, and the North Konkan under the control of the intrepid Admiral Kanoji Angre. Angre built a fleet of just 80 ships, Most of them were mere fishing boats that had been re-engineered and upgraded by the local coolies or fishermen who were the original inhabitants of Mumbai. But this fleet challenged European mercantile and maritime dominance in the Arabian Sea, insisting on the Maratha Empire's rights to taxation and sovereignty on its own territorial sea. It was a first for any local kingdom in the Indian Ocean littoral, as territorial waters were a European concept then. Angre had extraordinary success. The Europeans referred to him as the Prince of Pirates. But in fact, Kanoji Angre was fighting what would today be referred to as state-sponsored piracy, where the monarchs of Europe sent out their ships to loot and plunder for their liege from lands far afield. Thus began the modern maritime naval expertise in Mumbai and the making of Mumbai as a trading hub. Asia's first dry dock for shipbuilding was built in Bombay in 1750 by Lavji Nasirwanji Wadia. The Wadias of Bombay were also the first Indian shipbuilders. They built wooden ships and they carried the opium over to China. 100 years after the dry dock was built, Sassoon Docks, the country's first wet docks, were built in Mumbai. The first railway to operate in India ran from Bombay, which is where today's Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus is. It was called Bori Bandar, to Thane. So from Bombay to Thane in 1853. And for those who don't know it, but you read the Times of India newspaper every day, it is also affectionately called the Old Lady of Bori Bandar. The cotton trade began to boom once the railway started. The first cotton mill and cotton trade association was set up in Bombay in 1854. And for those of you who have the time, I urge you to visit the splendid cotton exchange on the eastern seaboard of the city. It was the first to organize and regulate the commodities trade. It was around this trade, which was enabled by local merchants as brokers, agents, bankers, stevedores, that the rapid growth of the city as a global financial center east of the Suez from 1870 to the 1940s was facilitated. Bombay was the biggest money market after London and much more before New York or Hong Kong. An ecosystem of educational excellence and expertise began to be built around it, which stands till today. The Bombay Stock Exchange was begun in 1875 by a cotton trader called Premchand Roychand. It is the oldest exchange in Asia and the 10th oldest in the world. Shortly thereafter, Victoria Jubilee Technical Institute, or VJTI, the oldest engineering college in Asia, was founded in 1887 in Bombay. The arts and women began to flourish around this. Cornelia Sorabji, a graduate of Bombay University in 1892, became the first woman to study law at Oxford University and was India's first woman barrister. The first commerce college in Asia was the Sydenham College of Commerce, founded in 1903, and the first school of architecture in Asia was the Sir J.J. School of Art, where Rudyard Kipling's father was the principal. The first diplomatic missions in India were established in Mumbai. It was inevitable that several of India's pioneering, I'm coming back to the diplomatic missions, but India's pioneering freedom movements because of this were launched from Bombay because of the presence of the educated and the wealthy traders in the city. Mumbai was also the center of modern India's naval expertise. The early roots of the Indian Navy and its fighting form, the sword arm, was the Western Fleet, established in 1968. This was based in Mumbai, specifically in a company, East India Company Marine Force known as the Bombay Marine, which lasted from 1686 to 1830. When India became a republic on 26 January 1950, this became the Indian Navy. The Indian naval fleet in Mumbai played a key role with its aircraft carrier INS Vikrant in the 1971 India-Pakistan War, with the Vikrant's Alizé and Seahawk fighter jets pounding East Pakistan ports and military installations. But more than war and relevant to our current times, the Indian naval ships from Mumbai have played exemplary roles in rescue and disaster relief missions, as they did during the devastating December 2004 tsunami, when naval ships in Mumbai were the first to reach tsunami-hit Sri Lanka and the Maldives. These attributes and dimensions are the same that are present in the new Indo-Pacific collaborations. Today, 14 of the 24 official large Indo-Pacific countries have consulates in Mumbai. Australia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Maldives, New Zealand, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Thailand, and the United States. Most of the European partners in the Indo-Pacific, like Germany and France, and former colonial ruler, the United Kingdom, also have active missions here, making Mumbai a natural western pillar of the Indo-Pacific commitments. The city's vibrant diplomatic corps has been present here for 200 years, and there are many of them in this room. The vibrant trade ensured that the first diplomatic missions in India were in fact established in Bombay, and their writ ran all the way across the Arabian Sea to Aden in Yemen and to Zanzibar. Even today, many of the nearly 50 missions here are still larger than their embassies. The earliest Indo-Pacific countries to open their account in Bombay was Siam, now Thailand, and the United States. That was 1838, was the US mission in Bombay. Japan then followed in 1893. They enhanced trading ties. American clippers sailed into Bombay Harbor in the mid-1800s, and America's first millionaire, Elias Haskett Darby, made a fortune trading in Deccan cotton, sourced from Bombay. The earliest American export to India was ice for Bombay's elite. It was cut from Boston's lakes and transported to India, wrapped in sawdust and felt. These Indo-Pacific linkages have obviously matured over the years. So now is the time to once again add Mumbai into the fold of the great cities of the Indo-Pacific: Dubai, Sydney, Tokyo, Singapore, Taipei, New York. All look east, but Mumbai looks west too, to the Indo portion of the Indo-Pacific that includes a newly booming and transforming West Asia, and to an East Africa that is growing in confidence. Its regional connections are centuries old. The British Empire's West Asian foreign policy was run out of Mumbai. Until 1956, the rupee was legal tender in many parts of that region, and all were regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. Mumbai is still the financial capital of India. Its financial ecosystem is sophisticated. Successful entrepreneurs, as you said, Jaibal, entrepreneurs, private banks, central bankers, stockbrokers, venture capitalists, private equity, fund managers, they abound in the city. Add to it advertising, media, Bollywood, progressive artists, international back offices, a manufacturing hub in Pune, its hinterland, and the dazzling new ultra-modern cultural center in which we are sitting. The country's best transport and 24-hour electricity come from the Tata companies, and it makes Mumbai the safest city in India for women, an essential ingredient of great cities. A world-class metro system with new roads and affordable housing will soon transform this city. The Reserve Bank of India has managed India's economy well and is among the most well-respected and trusted central banks in Asia. It has been an active player in India's digital revolution, which has created new models of fintech and finance tested at continental scale. I think we have some of the India Stack people here in the audience and as speakers. These can be replicated in other emerging economies, particularly the 14 Pacific Island countries that are otherwise isolated, and this can facilitate digital public goods and commerce for them, which is a big subject of this T20. Multinationals are making India a part of their global supply chain to diversify and de-risk, and Mumbai is headquarters to several of these enterprises. More than 40% of the S&P 500 companies have an office in Mumbai. The city contributes a fourth of India's revenue, and its infrastructure build-out is on in full steam. You can see signs of that all around you in Mumbai. This city has historically been the center of commerce in the Indian Ocean region. It is already regaining the role in the Indo-Pacific region as it becomes more closely integrated. So thank you, and welcome once again.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First off, let me candidly admit that it will be a very hard act to follow. the eloquence with which the previous two speakers have addressed the audience this evening, but it shall not be for want of an effort and trying on my part. Let me begin firstly by acknowledging the presence of Dr. Samir Saran, Dr. Jaibal Naduvath, our friend Ms. Manjeet Kripalani, the two distinguished ambassadors who have flown down from Delhi, Her Excellency Ina Krisnamurthi, Ambassador of Indonesia to India, and His Excellency Vincenzo de Luca, Ambassador of Italy to India. I also want to acknowledge in the audience the presence of my good friend Mr. Tetsushi Sonobe, the T7 chair, and his esteemed colleagues Nicola and many others who have made it possible to come down to Mumbai. But above all, the young people at the back who, to my mind, are among the most important part of the audience this evening. You represent the future of India, and I'm so very glad that this evening it's an event of Jan Bhagidari, one which brings the entire Indian family together. I do believe that we have a very large number of our happy T20 family here as well. Happy T20 family is something that I picked up a while ago from Ms. Kripalani. Thank you for allowing me that bit of plagiarism. But let me begin by saying that your presence here this evening represents in true measure the ancient Indian wisdom of ayam nija paroveti ganana laguchetasam udara charitanam to vasudhaiva kutumbakam. That it is in fact the large-hearted who regard the entire world as one family. And your presence this evening epitomizes that ancient civilizational wisdom that India has. But hearing as I did the very enchanting stories that Ms. Kripalani had to share about Mumbai as a center in the Indo-Pacific and why Mumbai matters, I was transported to the origins of my own family surname. And let me therefore hit a different note here. I can relate to Mumbai. Mumbai is in fact an emporium of trade and commerce, one with a traditional outlook that is seawards, one which has, as pointed out, had historical links with the Zanj coast of Africa, using favorably the monsoon winds for toing and froing between continental India and East Africa. And that kind of historical relationship continues till today. But this coast was also extremely important in terms of its trade and commerce on the other flank as well. We are all aware how the coast of Maharashtra, the Malabar coast, Calicut, Mamallapuram in Tamil Nadu, all these also had an Indo-Pacific vision. And it is for a reason that the English word calico, representing cotton textiles, comes from the word calicut. And the palyakate, or the scarves that were prepared in India, the cotton scarves, so named Palicut after Calicut, found their way all the way to Nueva España in Mexico through the now de China trade that took place from the Philippines to the New World. So I can relate to that as well, having served in most of the Indo-Pacific countries, including Australia, Japan, China, and the rest. But for me personally, it's a story that I wanted to tell you today. 200 years ago, a young man from a village in coastal Saurashtra, a village called Mangrol, not too far from Chorwad. Chorwad, as you know, is the home of Dhirubhai Ambani. And as you know, It is his vision that is represented today in this great Geo World Center. Our warmest congratulations to the Ambani family for having actually put up this wonderful facility, including the Nita Ambani Cultural Center, one of the finest in the world, that makes it possible for us to interact in the manner that we do today. But that village, Mangrol, produced a young boy called Nanji Jekaran Shah. And Nanji Jekaran Shah came to Mumbai to seek fortune. That was more than 200 years ago. And Nanji Jekaran Shah is my 6th generation ancestor. And mind you, it's an interesting story. He spent a number of years building his fortune and business in this great city of opportunity. He did business with the Tatas in those earliest days. And he also owned quite a stretch of territory in what is today Nariman Point. It was reclaimed land. It was already being reclaimed under the British in those days. Nanji Jekaran Shah had a huge godown in Mumbai that unfortunately caught fire one day and was burnt to the ground. And his friends, especially the mother of a dear friend, encouraged him not to lose hope and that he should once again stand up and seek fresh fortune. He thereafter went all the way to Kolkata as part of an Act East policy. In Kolkata, he is recognized officially as the founder of the Gujarati community there. The Gujarati Samaj in Kolkata begins with incantations, to his sort of memory, Nanji Jekaran Shah. From there, he followed the Marwadi community all the way to Shanghai, and then became the first Gujarati to set foot as a businessman in Shanghai. Lived there for 12 years, spoke fluent Chinese, made a fortune, came back to India. But what followed thereafter is quite interesting. When he came back with 3 ships laden with his goods and wealth. When nearing the shores of India, he was so elated at being back home after an absence of 12 years, during which his wife had given him up for dead. There was no letter writing in those days, and he was too busy, that he ordered the cannon on board to let off a salvo in salute to the motherland. They used to carry cannon on board in those days because there was piracy. Peace and security has always been an issue all over the world, in those days as well as now. And without peace and security, ladies and gentlemen, you know that there cannot be any development. None of our SDGs can be achieved without peace and security. So when he let off that salvo, the British garrison commander thought that they were being attacked. So he set out gunboats to have his 3 ships surrounded and had him arrested. And my 6th generation ancestor had to spend some time in jail for a short while, but the British were quite fair, frankly speaking, and when he narrated his feelings of elation that had led to the firing of the salvo of cannon on board, the British let him off with dignity, with all his possessions intact. Unfortunately, none of that wealth has come down to me. In fact, the last possession that the family had in this great city of opportunity, I wish I could come back here and make a fortune, is the building called the Mohini Mansion opposite the Strand Cinema. We own the whole building. I can only look at it admiringly from a distance now. But that is why I am a Chinoy. The short point here is that I am masquerading as a Chinoy. I am actually a Shah. And it is for the last 200 years that we took on this Indo-Pacific surname called Chinoy, for that meant people who had traded with China. Now you know what the origin of the name Chinoy is, whether it's an Anglo-Saxon from the United States, whether it is someone from Pakistan or India, a Parsi, a Hindu, no matter who, all Chinoys have trading links with China. And it's a matter of coincidence that in my life I ended up with the Indo-Pacific and China and Japan as part of my professional life. Did you like that story? Yeah. Mumbai is relevant. for my family too. I don't want to go into all the other stuff about G20 and all that. It's oozing out of your ears now. If I do that, I might put you to sleep. But there are just a couple of points. I do think that this particular G20 is very different, and it's very important for India, for all of us. And there are two outstanding features that distinguish our G20 presidency from, and no offense to Indonesia. Indonesia had a very successful presidency, but there are two areas which did not find adequate focus in previous G20 presidencies, and they do find the utmost importance in ours. And this is focus on gender equality, which is of particular and growing importance today, and Africa. Again, this vision and outlook towards Africa, the kind of vision that Ms. Kripalani mentioned, the kind of vision that the Prime Minister of India has spoken about. This is something that is unique to the Indian presidency, going beyond the generalities of supporting the global South by particularly focusing on that huge continent that has 54 countries. So we, during this G20 presidency, hope to offer, in a nutshell, a fresh choice to the global community in an era of polycrisis, of strife, of eroded, emaciated multilateralism, of great power contestation. There is a real threat that the developmental agenda is being steered away, from its rightful place. That greater emphasis is being placed on, other issues, which are no doubt important. But we must understand that the fundamental issues that challenge us today are essentially the great challenges of addressing debt distress, the great challenge of addressing climate challenge, a just and equitable transition, to a green economy. We must also remember that, and for me, as a novice to this field, I feel that the digital world that is now rapidly enveloping us with AI and fundamental transformations, this is something that we have to be wary of. At a time when there is so much of inequality around the world, especially in science and technology, especially the resources for emerging technologies, digital technology offers opportunities but also great risks and challenges. And I fear a world that will very quickly descend into a new kind of digital colonization. I think there is scope here for India to offer its version of an open, digital public infrastructure, the India stack that was referred to. We must help the developing countries of the global South to prepare for this digital challenge as well. In the din today that has overtaken our discourse and conversations, not much attention is being paid to this particular aspect. Of course, there are so many other important issues, and it is hardly the place for me tonight, this evening, to go into any kind of details. I was told, in fact, I was instructed that I must make a few, housekeeping points here, and I will be running a great risk if I did not quickly run through this. I want to congratulate all the task force members for so very ably conducting their work and contributing to the success of the Indian Think 20 work and the G20 presidency in general. This month, happy to tell you, we have completed 50 convenings of the T20 across working groups and as a larger collective as well. We have published 18 policy briefs already and are likely to publish over 400 more in the next 60 days. Chairs and co-chairs of the working groups are requested to kindly scan the briefs that the groups have reviewed and see if we could add some suggestions contained there as part of our task force recommendations. We plan to have our recommendations more or less finalized in the next 2 days during the task force breakout sessions. So remember, it's not all play. There's a fair bit of work here as well. You have a wonderful evening ahead of you, but then you must also sing for your supper. So that by the end of this month, we can finalize the communique. By June, we will have hosted outreach events in every continent. And I must say, behind that energy is really the energy that Dr. Samir Saran, the indefatigable Dr. Samir Saran, brings to the work of the T20 as a secretariat. And do please give him a big hand. I really want to thank you all once again. Thank you.
Ambassador Chinoy gave a very big shoe to fill in. So, Ambassador Chinoy, chair of T20 core group, my guru, Dr. Samir Saran, chair T20 secretariat, His Excellency Vincenzo, the Luca ambassador of Italy, and Madam Manjeet Kripalani, executive director, Gateway House, Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends, good evening. It is truly an honor for me to be here today at the opening plenary of the T20 Mid-Year Conference with the title G20 Continuity and Cooperation, Navigating Shifting Dynamics. The title of today's event is very pertinent. Let me name a few reasons. First, only a few days ago, WHO declared that the global health emergency of COVID-19 is over, although the virus itself remains a global health threat. Second reason, despite talk of globalization's demise, economic integration via cross-border commerce has shown remarkable resilience through war, famine, and pandemic. World trade growth in 2022 turned out to be in line with the baseline scenario according to WTO, which is 2.4% to 3%. This number is well above its more pessimistic scenario, in which trade would only grow at 0.5%. And Ambassador Chinoy, talking about gender equality, a Citigroup report published in 2022 revealed that increasing female representation in the tech industry could add $2 trillion to global GDP. Yes, the tech industry has traditionally been male-dominated, but women entrepreneurs are making significant strides and changing the game with fresh perspective, innovative ideas. Women-led tech startups are driving change and creating a more diverse and inclusive industry. Talking about gender equality. But on the other hand, Ambassador Chinoy also highlighted this, we are also meeting at a very critically challenging time. The world economy is yet to fully recover from the post-pandemic of COVID-19, long-standing challenges, including climate change, poverty, ensuring SDGs attainment, Ambassador Chinoy also mentioned about that, continue to confront us. Multifaceted challenges, including global food, energy, and don't forget, water insecurity, major powers rivalry, conflicts in many parts of the world have exacerbated global economic slowdown. In the midst of these intertwined challenges, the world finds it even more difficult to talk and listen to each other. But it is our fervent belief that the collaboration is the only way forward. As the G20's Ideas Bank, T20 is a vital platform for the exchange of ideas and expertise, bringing together some of the brightest minds from academia, think tanks, and civil society to explore innovative and workable ideas, and in the end, providing solid and sound policy recommendations to the leaders. Thus, Think20 could and should play a much needed role of an honest broker, a bridge for collaboration in shaping the global discourse and driving progress on key issues. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen and friends, allow me for a minute to bring you down to a memory lane of last year's G20. Our presidency begins with the early surge of the pandemic COVID-19. The virus knows no border. As such, joint and inclusive efforts were urgently needed in finding a way out, as well as best possible solutions, because no one knows what is the solution for the global recovery. Our G20 presidency further put emphasis on G20 as a catalyst to global solution, including in strengthening the global partnership with orientation on concrete, tangible, and impactful deliverables. On that note, Indonesia believes that G20 outcomes should not merely be documents or statements, but more significantly, it needs to produce concrete deliverables that have direct impact to the world at large. In this regard, we managed to agree on 361 concrete projects worth around 283 billion US dollars, and Indonesia and India itself have identified 6 concrete bilateral projects worth almost 5 billion US dollars. G20 Bali Leaders Declaration gives us a proof that the spirit of global collaboration still existed amidst the divergent views on certain global issues. The declaration is a manifestation of optimism that G20 may and can contribute to global recovery despite a very challenging situation. Looking at the future, Indonesia believes that the continuity of agendas in G20 is significant, and in this regard, we commend and congratulate India's presidency for continuing, if not strengthening and deepening, in moving the G20 agenda forward. In particular, continuously voicing out the needs and interests of the developing countries, the emerging economies, and in this particular presidency, Africa. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen and friends, now the Think20 baton has been passed to India. Efforts have been made, meetings were conducted, and so far, India's T20 Secretariat, under the able leadership of Dr. Samir Saran, has done some wonderfully excellent job in carrying forward the work of T20 during India's G20 presidency. However, the work is not done yet. Discussions and debates need to be continued and even further enhanced. Media asked me several times, what is the need of G20? G20 give a room, an avenue for dialogue, to encourage every one of us to explore, adopt, and implement policy recommendations developed using Think20 rigorous framework. And if I may refer to the document Stories of Collaboration, lesson learned from Think20 Indonesia, 3 important governance strategies for Think20 India presidency to be considered are: first, effective management structure for advocating policies to G20 finance track and Sherpa track. Number 2, keeping track of the T20 Communique and policy recommendations. And the last one, developing framework for a more structured and inclusive approach in formulating policy recommendation. The 5 task force that T20 India has established, I believe, is an evidence of India's strong commitment to continue the discussion on issues that not only G20 members or invitees, but the whole world need to address. Think20, therefore, has a strong potential to boost the G20 agenda. Given the current uncertain economic and geopolitical situation, the engagement group, particularly Think20, can be an avenue to discuss various important agenda in a genuine, open, and balanced approach, while at the same time trying to bridge the diverse interests among the most influential economies of the world. At a time of weakened unity within the G20, India as the host will have to deal with these difficult challenges as well. The spirit of collaboration within the G20 needs to be reinvigorated. It is indeed the only answer to our global problems. The more divided we are, the more our people will suffer. After all, the theme of India's presidency is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, carries a meaningful message that we are together in the same boat of this one planet Earth that we love so much. We must continue the momentum, and I hope that G20 can show again such unity of purpose this year under India's able leadership. And as Troika, Indonesia stands ready to work constructively for the success of India's presidency in G20. Many people are hoping that G20 as the premier forum for global economic collaboration to remain effective amidst such a complex global situation. Indonesia is confident that with goodwill and dialogue, progress will be achieved. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Ambassador Chinoy, dear colleague Ambassador Krisnamurthi, dear friend Samir Saran, Mrs. Kripalani, it's a real pleasure for me to be here in Mumbai and to inaugurate the Indian T20 Mid-Year Conference, which will shape the agenda for the final T20 Summit. The T20 is a critical engagement group that feeds important policy recommendation into the G20 process. The in-depth analysis it provides to decision makers are particularly valuable, especially in these interesting, at the same time, challenging times. A lot has been said and written about the international environment we live in. Whether it's a transition period or a new normal, the fact is that some of the assumptions we all took for granted are profoundly challenged. Unpredictability is the only predictable feature of these days, as well as the fact that challenges nowadays are of a global nature. The COVID crisis has showed how much a disruption in one link affects the entire value chain. It was a wake-up call and dramatically highlighted the process of globalization as we knew it. As international trade came to a halt, we realized how dependent we are from one another. The conflict in Ukraine hinted in the same direction, with the spillover on energy and food security and waves of inflation which have reached areas very remote from that where the war is fought. Challenges like climate change are boundless by definition. Against this background, it's quite natural to ask which role international cooperation can play to navigate these troubled waters. Let's face it, in times of great distress, the temptation is big to sort problem on one's own, or at least giving priority to one's own immediate interest. We have seen this at the beginning of the pandemic, when it took us a while to overcome national and regional approach and set up a global response to COVID-19, with initiatives like COVAX and international cooperation in many areas. And the parochial attitude seems to drive international cooperation also today, we hope. Instead, I believe it's high time to make a case for a multilateralism that goes beyond our cultural comfort zone. Minilaterals and regional organizations are important. These formats may prove useful to start the conversation or to define regional issues. But when it comes to global challenges, new global governance, a larger consensus, and a common effort, this is the today challenge for all of us. Again, think about climate change. Although with different tasks and responsibility, we all have to contribute to the fight. Else, the impact of the whole humankind will be dreadful in terms of food shortage, extreme weather events, and indirectly new conflicts arising from climate-induced migration and transboundary disputes over scarce resources. The same is true for energy transition, whose urgency has been highlighted by the energy crisis, and for digitalization, whose benefits can be widely shared only through a common effort. Our ability to work together on our common challenges will determine our success. But we can work together effectively only if we play fairly and abide by commonly defined rules. This requires a functioning international order. In my view, but the same ideas have been shared by Prime Minister Meloni in her speech at the Raisina Dialogue at the beginning of March, a functioning international order requires two elements: multilateralism as a mindset, multilateral effective institutions. Multilateralism as a mindset is based on a few principles that cannot be put in question: respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states, big and small, peaceful approach to dispute settlement. This is the backdrop against which multilateral institutions operate. Sure, the world has changed since the rules of the game were established after World War II. And it's high time, and as underlined also in the G20 Indian presidency, to rediscuss and update the governance and the effectiveness of many multilateral organizations. I believe the G20 can be an ideal format for such discussion. First of all, the G20 is itself a child of the crisis in 2008. It was set up to face an international economic crisis. It proved able to navigate a pandemic during our Italian presidency, and it achieved a common language on one of the most divisive conflicts of our times during the past Indonesian presidency. Moreover, it's a truly global forum encompassing all continents, with more than 20 countries, including the guest this year with a special focus on Africa, as has been said, with different levels of economic development and cultural background. Can it remain effective and address common issues? My answer is yes, if it does not refrain from putting difficulties on the table and from searching for innovative approach. I would say that the Italian presidency set a positive example during its period in 2021. Its horizontal goals was exactly that of relaunching multilateralism and strengthening international cooperation at the peak of the pandemic, when retreating behind national interests was the automatic reaction of many countries. It did so by putting emphasis on three priorities: people, planet, prosperity. But if you think also the fil rouge between Italy, Indonesia, recover together, recover stronger, and India, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, we are talking about the destiny of the planet, the destiny of the people, the destiny of our families. So, people, planet, prosperity was our priorities. Recognize that the precondition for prosperity was the eradication of COVID all over the world. The Italian presidency steered the G20 countries towards stronger commitments in the production and distribution of anti-COVID vaccine and cure. At the same time, looking at the longer term, he set the discussion on how to shape a new model of growth, more equitable and inclusive for all the world population and more sustainable for the environment. Many points of the Global South agenda. I wrote an article some days ago on this. The agenda of G20 in Italy and the agenda on Global South. The results achieved were very encouraging, among which the agreement to keep the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees compared to the pre-industrial levels, the reaffirmation of developed countries' climate finance commitment to jointly mobilize $100 billion per year, the agreement on the implementation of new rules for a more stable and fairer international tax system, the renewed commitment towards the Sustainable Development Goals and the Debt Relief Initiative. What was also relevant was the establishment of new joint format like Finance Health Task Force, that is also in the agenda today, which helped address the complex challenges of our times through a more effective multidisciplinary approach. It's noteworthy that a number of these priorities, as I told you, have been reconfirmed in the Indonesian presidencies and the Indian presidencies today. To sum up, new times and new challenges call for new approaches. Crises are what we make out of them, and we can surely turn them into opportunities. As always, this will require boldness and vision, innovative approach and solution, keeping in mind that international relations are much richer than just state-to-state relations. Facing crises which stretch over geographies and time, we can and must involve a larger community to look for solutions that may be found out of the box. We must dig deeper in this perma-crisis. And as you are all analysts, you are certainly aware that analysis means literally in the ancient Greek etymology, breaking down a problem, untying its different parts, as the Plato school said. To me, this is one of the most important contributions the G20 can give to the international policy community today, to slice complexity into manageable pieces without losing the big picture. The big picture is to find global solutions to global challenges today. Thank you. Dhanyavad.